I've wanted to check out Katmai National Park for a long time. It's a huge park and it's hard to get to. Most people get there by flying from Anchorage to King Salmon and then King Salmon to Brooks Camp, and either staying there for bear viewing or maybe taking the shuttle up to Valley of 10,000 Smokes. But the park is huge. It's just stacked with volcanoes. I think there's like 15 active volcanoes in the park. So I wanted to see more of it, all of it, as much as possible. So started planning a traverse with Josh Mumm. Flew from Anchorage to Cageyak Bay, so that's in the northeast corner of the park, and skied out to King Salmon in the southwest corner. So we were able to traverse the whole park. It's about 200 miles. Our first objective was Mount Douglas, and I'd heard that the crater lake was acidic, and so we brought litmus paper, and it turned out to be pH 1, which is basically just like raw acid. Though Josh tasted it and he said it didn't taste as tangy as battery acid. We poked around along the edge of the lake there at steam vents and little bubbling ports along the water's edge, and our feet got warm while we were just hanging out. It was awesome.
Yeah, this is a hot pot here. Hand in the colorless bit.
After Douglas, we climbed Four Peaked Mountain, which last erupted in 2006, and then we skied from the summit down to the coast, getting down pretty late, like maybe just shy of midnight. Morning we had to cross this slough, but we were able to piece together some dammed river ice, little like icebergs to cross. It was a good way to wake up in the morning. We picked up a food cache and then continued skiing to Cageyak Crater, which is this huge crater 1.5 miles across. Spent the night there. That was our coldest night, I think. I think because it's like a cold air trap in the crater, there was nowhere for the cold air to escape. The next morning, climbed out of that and then worked our way toward the next massif of volcanoes. So that includes Devil's Desk and Cageyak, which had a bunch of steam coming off the summit, Stellar and Denison. And we like literally had to weave around this big steam vent on Denison. It was super cool. When we got back, I heard from some geologists that they didn't have that steam vent mapped on Denison, so they were really interested in what we'd seen. After Denison, we dropped down into Katmai River, and we found some hot springs in there that we didn't expect, which was awesome. They weren't super hot, but they were warm enough to spend some time in. And so we soaked and cleaned up. Josh washed his clothes. From the Katmai River, we climbed up the traditional trade route to Katmai Pass, and that brought us into the Valley of 10,000 Smokes. And Josh had been watching weather forecasts from our inReach and kept talking about some blizzard to come, which sounded ridiculous because it was blue sky, hardly any wind, and the weather had been good for like 4 weeks straight in south central Alaska. But he thought it was a good idea to push through to get to this hut in the dark, just in case this bad weather hit. So we got to the hut. We had to spend some time digging the doors out because they were buried in snow. But got inside, crashed out, and a couple hours later, the wind picked up and the blizzard kicked in. So we spent 2 days in that hut waiting for the storm to pass, and it was so nice to be in the hut for that. When the weather did clear, we continued down the Valley of 10,000 Smokes and then on to Brooks Camp and out Naknek Lake to King Salmon. And that last like 80 miles was all pretty flat and not as scenic. The main motivation was that from King Salmon we could take a frequent flyer mile flight back to Anchorage, so that was the cheapest option. But we had a tailwind that whole time. I think we went the last 30 miles in something like 8 hours just because we were getting pushed. So it turned out great. Hitched a ride into town, got some food, and then flew home. Katmai National Park just blew my mind. Like the Alaska factor, the raw ice and volcanoes, just one volcano after another. And I'm really appreciative that land is preserved as part of the national park system. I don't know if March is the best time for everyone to visit, but it's definitely worth putting on the list.